what happened as a result, you know. The land was transferred from native title to crown title, thus gaining substantive sovereignty. Now I'm just going to give you a little postscript on historians, because they can look at what previous historians have omitted from their analysis. They can put a different emphasis on things, and we can see that difference with Danny Keenan and Bellich. They can weight different reasons. That's what we taught our students to do, to weight one reason as more important than the other. For example, I would have said that Wiremu Kingi being helped by Rewi Manipoto would be not as important a reason as the threat of Kingitanga. So I'm weighting it, you know. Different cultural understandings, absolutely, I believe that's true. And an arrogance by, you know, the governors of the day that their way was the correct way, and different ways of thinking about the stuff that you've done. Now, just to give you an overview here, this is interesting, James Cowan was the first official historian, and you can still access his book from the electronic text archive of Victoria University. And it's quite interesting because his way of constructing his argument was to interview those people who fought in the wars on both sides, oral interviews. He spoke Māori. He actually lived not far away from Orako, actually, but he was a historian and a journalist, actually, who became a historian, and he came up with, a lot of his books are written very descriptively about what's happening in the battles and so on, but he did say desire for land and racial prejudice were the reasons for the wars. Sinclair really upped the ante on settler pressure for land, so he didn't really buy into the sovereignty argument, but he also has a few chapters on racial prejudice. He says, and I think that's the envy of the Maoris doing well, trading with Auckland in the 1850s. I think that promotes the racial prejudice part, and that's the evidence that he's got there. Bellich, of course, comes along, and he, in 1890, interesting the dates, they're chronological too, aren't they? And he says that it's about asserting substantive sovereignty where it was previously only nominal. And Danny Keenan is arguing about land and putting the cultural understanding of Maori's connection to land as being the most important. And Vincent O'Malley takes both. And I think I'd probably sit with Vincent O'Malley. He's the latest historian of prominence to talk about the wars. His colonial government's relentless strive to assert absolute authority over Maori and secure fertile lands for Europe, and etc., which were the causes. And I think that I sit with that one, really seems to make sense, you know. Now there's the two gun turrets of the Pioneer. I find it's particularly rude that the one on the left is at Ngarawahia Domain, just close to the Kingitanga. They're kind of reminding them of, you know, we used this Pioneer to beat you brothers, you know, in 1860s. And that one there was actually an Anzac memorial at Mercer, and there's a World War I soldier standing on top of a model of it, and Mercer, Captain Mercer, was actually killed during the Waikato Wars. And it's kind of like a tribute to him too, see, so, and you can actually walk into that gun turret at Ngarawahia. Good. That is the Queen's Apology 1995. That's Jim Bolger, Queen Elizabeth, Dame Te Ati Rangikahu, and Doug Graham. And that's interesting because if you read Jim Bolger's book, it's very interesting. He's got a chapter on the relationship between Māori and the government, and it's very, very sympathetic to Māori. And he argues, if you talk to him, I've heard podcasts by him, he argues that it was very similar to the way the British had treated the Irish. And of course, he's Irish New Zealander. Bolger, you know, 9 children. So I find it very interesting that and Doug Graham, of course, too, was one of the first MPs to, as a Minister of Māori Affairs, to negotiate some of the Waitangi settlements. That's the text. I'm going to send you this anyway. Have you got a Google Drive? You have? Yeah, well, I'll send it to you as a Google Drive because it's about 50 megabytes. There's all the images, but I'll do that because, and it's got the bibliography in there that I've used to actually, for this presentation today. So I really have to say the other one, which I'll send you that one as well. see this where it says Pugsley, Walking the Waikato Wars? That was in the Defence Quarterly magazine, and I liked it so much that I got in touch with, and they don't produce it anymore. It's no longer a magazine that's produced by the Ministry of Defence. But I got in touch with an editor down there. I said, look, I'd like to be able to scan it and use it for teachers so they can use it as a reference point when they're talking about the Waikato Wars. And she said, that's fine as long as you don't make any money out of it. You can't sell it. And so I've distributed that to history teachers, all of the scans of the invasion of the Waikato. And it's Christopher Pugsley, who is a very animated and enthusiastic presenter, talking about, in those articles, about the Waikato Wars. So that covered a quite nice little hour. It's lovely.
Brilliant.
Please.
Thank you so much.